you, being the man that I am, I had to start critically thinking again, and I said, all right, I have to go back and look at this, albeit I didn't want to. But I have a critically thinking mind. I am open-minded, number one. I'm open-minded enough to know that most of what I had been taught throughout my entire life is not really what it appears to be. So I'll tell you, I've been wrapped around this for about 3 months now. And I've been deeply involved in research. I've been deeply involved in mental experiments, thought projects, trying to go, wait a minute, something's wrong here. I can't say that I'm a flat earther yet, but I would say that I am a ball earth skeptic. And I'll tell you the biggest reason why. And we're going to talk to Mark Sargent here in a minute because his movie was fantastic and it really helped me with several things. The biggest reason that I had to look at this again is that nobody has ever circumnavigated the globe north to south. What are they hiding in Antarctica? What is going on down there? We're going to talk to Mark Sargent about much of this and even more. We're going to go down the rabbit hole here, and we are going to explore a concept, an idea, a conspiracy theory that is even taboo in the conspiracy theory movement or in the truth movement. So when we come back, we're going to be talking to Mark Sargent. So stay tuned. This is going to be a good show. I would encourage people to call in if you have questions because this is a great topic. So we're going to be going ahead and taking a break here, and then we're going to be bringing up Mark Sargent, the maker of Flat Earth Clues. And welcome back to the Awakening Liberty Show with Sean Carone, me, your humble host, right here on the FreedomizerRadio.com network. I want to send a special shout-out to some new listeners of mine and the great barbecue that we had today, Myra and Joe, and the food was fabulous. I so much just thank you from the bottom of my heart. That was a great experience. Myra, your food was outstanding, so I'm definitely very happy to have you listening to the show as well. That's great. So anyway, we're going to go ahead, and I'm going to bring up Mark Sargent here, and we're going to talk a little bit about this flat Earth theory and debate this whole thing a little bit. And Mark, are you with us this evening?
I am, Sean. Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, thank you for being on the show, Mark. And thank you for your video. You know, Flat Earth Clues really inspired me to start even looking at this again, and
cool.
I really appreciate what you did.
You're
and
welcome.
I apologize for our direct connect. This is the third week in a row, and I find it funny. Every time I start talking about what I really believe is the truth, I seem to have all kinds of problems on Blog Talk Radio. This is a signature of the elite or the power structure or something like that's going on here. So
yeah, funny how that happens.
That's very true. What makes me happy, though, is I'm not the only one experiencing. I mean, people like John B. Wells are having it happen to them. Who knows what's going on here? It's obvious to me that they're actually listening. So, let's talk a little bit about this. All right. Like I said, I just want to look at this. Yeah, let's talk some flat Earth. Before I do that, I want to give you the opportunity here because you are one of the premier people involved in this flat Earth truth movement. And there are some other people involved in it as well, and there's a lot of people bashing you. And I want to give you the opportunity to tell us that because they're saying you work for the NSA, they're saying you're a shill, all this kinds of stuff. Just give us your take on that and tell us who you really are.
The three people that really started out in this thing and really ramped up. There was a guy that was doing it a long time ago, actually years ago. His name was Matt Boylan. An artist out of Canada. He was the closest thing to a whistleblower we had, and he basically said that he had worked for NASA as a contract artist, as a photorealistic artist. But when he was doing it, nobody was really listening to him. Excuse me one second. And then there was Eric Dubé, who had built a lot of his work off of Matt's stuff, and he was doing it really kind of late last year, early this year. And then I came out in the middle of February this year and did Flat Earth Clues, and really just kind of laid down the structure. It was really kind of like a Flat Earth for Dummies sort of thing. It wasn't very flashy, in my opinion. It was just a narrative, some slideshow, and I broke it down from A to Z. And I caught some flack from the Flat Earth movement, which was really amazing. Eric wanted me to follow his model exactly. And and I wouldn't do it. I said, look, my model is slightly different from yours, but I think they're minor points. We should really just kind of move down the path. And Matt kind of wanted to guide me in a certain direction as well, wanted to kind of steer me. And I said, look, I appreciate the input, guys, but I'm going with my thing. And I'll go it alone if I have to. And so yeah, there was some discrediting that was thrown out there, no question. And I didn't blame them. I was accused of. They didn't really specify an agency. Didn't say who I worked for, whether it be the FBI, CIA, NSA, whatever alphabet group you want. But they were more or less trying to shoot me down. But there wasn't really much they could do. So in the process, they ended up fighting between each other, and now I'm kind of. Pushing 30 interviews later, I'm at the forefront of this thing, and I'm flattered. I'm humbled. But look, all I really did was give an old idea some new structure, and that's where we are now.
Yeah, and as you said, Flat Earth for Dummies. I loved the way you did it. Obviously, I actually watched it in a full length because somebody had put all the clips together into a full length video. But the way
I didn't make
it
that
initially.
Yeah.
Yeah. Initially in your playlist, it was, just short clips. I think there were, 10, 12 minutes, something like that. So, and it wasn't about all of the math. It wasn't about all the physics or the concepts of getting animation programs and all this to going. And the other guys have done that. But this actually breaks it down with some very, very simple clues and where you don't have to go that route. So I would encourage people to really go and watch it. And it's available on your YouTube channel, right?
Yep, it's available on the YouTube channel. You can either Google Flat Earth Clues or do it on YouTube, or you could just go to enclosedworld.com. In fact, I had to build a website for this because it was getting so much traction. I didn't even have a website up all the way until April. And then I was like, oh, crap, I got to do something here. So I started building a website, so it's out there as well. But yeah, the Flat Earth Clues, there's an introduction and 11 clues, so 12 total. They each run between, 8 minutes and 12 minutes. Some are a little bit longer, some a little bit less. But yeah, what you're saying, they break it down into small digestible chunks. And I use no math when I'm talking this stuff. I don't go over the curvature. I don't go over the Coriolis effect. I don't talk about the physics of gravity. It's really the broad strokes is what I was going for. The stuff that really makes you scratch your head. And by the time I was done, by the time I was at like clue 4, I realized there was no turning back. That this thing was actually, initially I had put out, back in the early February, I really structured a question and I put it out to the internet, or the internet hive mind as I like to call it. And I said, look, I don't think it's a globe. Tell me how you know it's a globe. And I thought for sure, because, the internet is a smart place, the combined intelligence of what's out there. Nobody came back and proved it. In fact, it got worse, where more people were asking, wait, how do you know it's a globe? And to the point now, here we are in July, almost into August, and it still hasn't been answered, it's amazing. This thing is for real. It's, the most laughable conspiracy of all time may turn out to be the one that changes it all.
Yeah, I'm starting to really agree with you. And like I said, I didn't really want to look at this, but claiming to be who I am, which is being open-minded, always a student, I had to look at this. And by the way, for you archived listeners on Blog Talk Radio, you will see the link in the description field below, Flat Earth Clues. Just click right on that. It will take you right to Mark's video, so go ahead and watch that. So, the first thing I want to talk about is a little bit about NASA.
Sure.
And we obviously know, and I think you have to wrap your head around NASA before you can actually open your mind up enough to look at the plausibility or possibility of a flat Earth. So tell us a little bit about NASA and who these people really are, and what have they been doing? Are they lying to us completely?
NASA has been, and you can find, various, we all know that the moon missions, the Apollo missions, have been in question for a long, long time, ever since they were fired up in the 60s. But through my research, I have pretty much determined that NASA is an absolute fraud from day one. As a matter of fact, even before they were created. They went online in 1958. And right after they were doing the high altitude atomic tests, between Russia and America, they went online in 1958. And I believe full well, without any doubt in my mind, that they were created as a part of the process to keep this thing hidden from us. To keep, if you want to call it a Truman Show, if you want to call it an enclosed structure, if you want to call it, the firmament, take your pick. But they were designed specifically to militarize space and to keep it from us. And for those people who still don't understand, if they think that NASA is just this benign Starfleet, Star Trek organization that's all about science and peace and love, no. It's a military wing of the United States government. It was formed on military technology. In fact, it's the only group that was formed. it was literally built on missile technology. And once they started up in 1958, everything ramped up really, really quickly. So, they were the ones that announced the Van Allen radiation belts in 1959. Then they start, the Mercury program, the Gemini program, and then when the Apollo program came online, look up, people want to have fun, look up when the rumors that NASA hired Stanley Kubrick and, gave him 5 years and an unlimited budget to see what he could create, what he could simulate in film about space travel. And then 1968, a year before Apollo came out, 2001, A Space Odyssey, no coincidence there. Then 1969 through 1972, they, supposedly launched, Apollo 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17, right? Supposedly did all these missions, manned missions, supposedly went round trips through the Van Allen radiation belts. That's twice. Round trips through the deadliest thing ever known, announced in 1959 that absolutely any humans that went into it would die without any shielding. And when they came back, nobody had cancer, nobody had radiation poisoning, the capsules weren't contaminated and all these things. And then they just kept continuing the lie all the way through the space shuttle program and the Skylab and the whole night, to the point now where the ISS is just a joke.
Yeah, there's so many questions involved with what NASA has done, and you mentioned the high-altitude nuclear testing, which was Operation Fishbowl, and we're going to get into that a little bit when we talk about Admiral Byrd. I want to make a comment about NASA. From what I see, NASA is probably all the money that has been spent, all the taxpayer dollars that have been spent, it seems to me it's got to be the biggest heist in world history.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like we're getting anything for our money except what NASA now stands for, in my opinion, is never a straight answer. Something is going wrong at NASA, and there's too many coincidences that just strange things. And you mentioned something about the radiation belts. I want to play a clip, if you don't mind. It's about two and a half minutes of Alan Bean, who was on Apollo 12. He was the fourth man to allegedly walk on the moon, and talking about the radiation belts. I just found this very, very interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and play this clip. Bear with us. It's about 2 minutes and 28 seconds long. Again, Alan Bean, the fourth man to walk on the moon, who flew through the radiation belts.
Any ill effects from the Van Allen radiation belts?
No. Now, I'm not sure we went far enough out to encounter the Van Allen radiation belt. Maybe we did.
When it was pointed out that the flight pattern took him through the belts, he changed his story.
The belts are 1,000 miles to 25,000 miles above the Earth.
We went right out through them.
No effects on your cells?
We didn't even know it. I don't think anybody, maybe somebody said you went through the radiation belt, but we didn't feel it inside, and we didn't get any, added radiation.
The space shuttle went to 365 miles a few years ago because I worked in news. I saw CNN. They said that the radiation belts surrounding Earth are more dangerous than previously believed because the astronauts saw shooting stars with their eyes closed when they got within 600.
Radiation belt. We saw shooting stars, but they're not shooting stars with your eyes closed, although they look like it. If you're out in space beyond the Van Allen belt, and probably within the Van Allen belt, and close your eyes and just pay attention. You don't notice it unless you pay attention. Then all of a sudden you'll see a little flash like a shooting star, except it's like that. There goes one this way. Then one just blossoms. And then not that fast. Maybe you wait 3 minutes or 2 minutes and one goes whoosh. And what's happening is cosmic rays are hitting the back of your eye and exciting those sensors in the back of your eye. So that's what you see. And they got high enough apparently to close them. My guess is in Earth orbit, if you closed your eyes and just paid attention, that you would see them.
The first time they were seen was when they went to 365 miles.
Yes.
That's 650 miles below or away from the radiation.
Yeah, see, it's below. My guess if they just did it tonight. But see, if you're just going to sleep or closing your eyes or it's dark, you don't notice them. But if you'll close your eyes and pay attention, which we had an experiment to do, by the way, then you see them whistling by. Not on our mission, by the way, they hadn't been discovered yet. Hadn't been discovered yet. Hadn't been discovered yet. Hadn't been discovered yet.
Now, do I detect a whole load of BS in that interview? What do you think, Mark?
Oh yeah, that's an expert. I know that one well. That's an excerpt from Astronauts Gone Wild when he was trying to ambush the astronauts and trip them up with questions, and he did. He nailed them on that one because he said that they must not have been discovered yet, which was a bunch of crap. It was discovered in 1959. That in fact NASA was the ones that announced it. So the astronauts were, the Apollo astronauts, they were briefed about as well as they could, but unfortunately, if you do enough interviews, and some of them avoided it over time, they're going to trip up, and that was a perfect example of it. I mean, the fact that one of the astronauts wouldn't know exactly, not only would he not know if he passed through the Van Allen radiation belts, but he didn't even know when they were discovered. Oh yeah. Yeah, bunch of crap.
Yeah, that interview just blew me away, and the whole Astronauts Gone Wild thing is just bizarre to me. And the interviewer, you can hear when he starts to put him on the spot. If you know anything about the Astronauts Gone Wild, I mean, it resulted in at least one fist fight, and I believe was it Buzz Aldrin that actually threw a punch at the guy. You can actually hear the interviewer's voice crack a little bit during this when he starts to put Alan Bean on the spot, and I found that kind of funny. And then this BS starts just over and over again. That's some amazing stuff. And then, is there any truth? And I've had some conflicting things about Chernobyl and the fact that the Soviet Union actually asked the American government after Chernobyl that they asked them, they said, can we use the spacesuits that you flew through the Van Allen radiation belts with and went to the moon in the heavy radiation to actually help clean up the Chernobyl accident? And America said, basically, you can use them, but there's no radiation shielding in them. There's nothing in them that will protect you from that. Is there any truth to that?
Oh yeah. There's no radiation shielding at all in anything. We've known this for the longest time, and again, that was the problem when they announced. Again, it seemed like a great idea at the time, announcing the Van Allen radiation belts in 1959. But only later, and they had 10 years to figure out a way around this. Only later, because we didn't know anything about radiation back then, did they figure out that there's only two common elements that you can use to protect yourself from radiation. One is lead, that big blanket we get put on us when we go to the dentist's office, and the other one is gold, because gold is twice as dense as lead. Most people don't know that. But you can't put lead, or you can't put heavy material like that in anything because it weighs you down. If you put it on an astronaut, he might as well be deep sea diving. If you put it on top of a capsule, you at that point you're flying an anchor. So no, there's no shielding to speak of on anything. It's all lies, all of it. There are no astronauts that are put on the top of rockets. I'll even go, and if this gets phone calls, that's fine. No astronauts sit on top of rockets. If anyone has any doubts, look up some wonderful YouTube videos and web pages that say the Challenger astronauts are still alive from the Challenger disaster in 1986.
I've seen that.
You can look at these pictures. I mean, two of these people supposedly have twin brothers.
Yeah, exactly.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, that stuff blows me away too. So now that we've kind of determined that NASA is full of you-know-what, and basically they've been feeding us a line of crap, we're going to get into the reasons why they were doing that. But I want to jump over and talk a little bit about Admiral Byrd.
Sure.
And you mentioned the high-altitude nuclear testing, Operation Fishbowl. There was Operation Deep Freeze and Operation High Jump, which was in between the two, actually. So tell us a little bit about Admiral Byrd, who he was, and what he was doing in the Antarctica in the 50s.
Admiral Byrd, what most people will know him from the Hollow Earth theory. And that's all really anybody knows about him until I started doing my research on this, which was Admiral Byrd in 1926 flew a pretty rickety plane up to the North Pole, and if you believe his secret diaries, said that there was an opening at the North Pole which led into a giant cavernous chamber where there was civilizations and animals, a journey to the center of the Earth type thing. But what most people don't know is that after 1926, specifically starting in 1928, the governments of whoever was controlling them, if you want to say it was the American government, that's fine. Admiral Byrd, by the way, was the youngest admiral in the United States Navy of all time. He made admiral at age 41, which is astounding. But they sent him down to the South Pole, and that's where he spent pretty much the rest of his life, all the way to his dying day, from 1928 until 1957. That's when he died, looking for something in the South Pole. And it was mission after mission. And then he didn't do any missions during World War II and down the South Pole, although if you want to look at some interesting stuff, there was one group who did do a lot of missions during World War II, and that was Nazi Germany. And then right after World War II in 1956, he went down, 1946, he went down to do Operation High Jump, which again is an interesting name, where he took a full-blown carrier fleet, complete complement, thousands of men, and he had to deal with something. But whatever happened down there, they've got that one, whatever that mission happened during that mission was really, really tight under wraps. So after that, he kept doing more missions in the late 40s and early 50s. And then in 1954, it appeared that whatever he was looking for, he had stopped looking. And if you want to take your pick on which authority, the Illuminati, the Bilderbergers, the Masons, whoever was directing them, even they, I think, had given up. So, because in 1954, he goes on television, on national television, on CBS, and you can look this up online. It's a great find. I'm so glad somebody released it. He goes on television in 1954 and says, oh yeah, by the way, Antarctica is pretty much made out of money, and a lot of countries are interested, including Russia and America and England, and Australia, everyone that could be somebody was down there. And we're going to make money. There's coal, there's oil, there's minerals, there's uranium. And there's nothing to worry about because there's no plant life, there's no animal life. Who cares, right? And then he goes down the very next year for Operation Deep Freeze in 1955 to 1956. And that's when the world changed. If you want to know a pivotal year in history, that's when it all changed. Because whatever they found down there, and I have no doubt what they found, whatever they found down there scared them to such a degree that all the countries left the ice at the same time, and they put an ironclad treaty in place in 1959 called the Antarctic Treaty, which forbids any corporation from any country in the world from doing any resource work down there forever. It is still in place today. If anyone knows of a treaty that has lasted longer, that has involved more nations, 10 nations signed on in 1959, and every country that becomes economically viable has to sign on to this treaty. It's not even up for debate until 2041. And when I saw that, it was like, okay, that's where we've got a problem, because what conspiracy is bigger than money? I mean, everybody knows that money and power and greed rule the world, but this was bigger than that. They couldn't come up with a cover story. I mean, there's literally, you guys can look, this is not secret information. You look up online, and you see that lost my train of thought. The Antarctic Defense Force exists. There's actually such a thing. It's a multinational, highly militarized, state-of-the-art weaponry that protects the Antarctic. From what? What are you protecting exactly? There's nobody down there.
Everything I've read is it's guarded much like Area 51 would be. Obviously the 99%ers, we can't just go down to Antarctica without an escort. It can only be approached from 3 different places on the planet. And you're actually escorted out there. You can only go to the islands, so you can't actually get to the continent, quote unquote, of Antarctica. Something really raised some red flags for me with that too. And the other thing is, Mark, why in the world, when they tell us they sent a man to the moon with technology less sophisticated than your cell phone, that we cannot circumnavigate the globe north to south in an airplane or even in a ship? Why has that never been done?
Yeah, it's one of those things that's been swept under the rug for years and years. Everybody knows that you have bored millionaires and billionaires that love to traverse, the world every which way but loose. And you're telling me that nobody in either a ship or a plane or a hot air balloon or whatever you want, and I know the weather systems go from east to west, so a balloon's not practical. But yeah, nobody circumnavigated north to south. Nobody talks about it. It is the best kept secret in the world, and that is, if you guys want me to boil it down for you, there's something wrong in the southern hemisphere. More specifically, there's something wrong with Antarctica, and they have hidden it forever from everybody. You can spend $10,000-$12,000 and get to the peninsula off Chile and take your picture with penguins, but that's it. Other than that, you cannot go in the interior without severe amounts of permits. There's layers of treaties now involved, and there's a high amount of military. But more importantly than that, it's like, why? Here's the part that bugged me more than anything, and that was corporations. We'll just pick on the petroleum industry because it's easy. Look, if they want to get into your backyard and start fracking, they can do it, right? They've got a high degree of, unless the entire town decides to go against them, they are going to get in your backyard and go fracking. But you're telling me this same corporation, even though there's nothing, there's no conflicting forces out there, they not only are they not allowed to drill or in Antarctica, they're not even allowed to talk about it. They're not even allowed to petition it. When does that happen? You'd think they would just lobby the hell out of Congress, or whatever politicians they had to, and then put out some stories saying why it would be good for America if we were drilling, for oil in Antarctica. But no, they're not even allowed to talk about it, and it's just mind-blowing that it has been missed for so long.
Yeah, and isn't it true that all the nations that are in the Antarctic Treaty, which was signed in 1958, correct?
59.
59, and obviously after Operation Fishbowl, all these nations all have their own space programs, do they not?
A lot of them do. Yeah, it's one of the funny thing is, you got your European Space Agency, JAXA, which is the Japan Space Agency, China, Russia, India, and the United States. So really 5 or 6 main ones, because it still takes a lot of money to,
right.
If you're going to fake something like that. But yeah, they're all in on it because NASA was the one that started it. So they all go through NASA. They get all their instructions, all the blueprints, go through NASA. NASA knows exactly what they're doing, and NASA's the one that trains them. It's like, look, you want to fake a space program? Here's how you do it. I mean, most people don't even know that supposedly, like the United States supposedly has a Mars rover, that's still broadcasting pictures. Most people don't know. People know that, but they don't know that China supposedly has a rover on the moon right now. That landed in 2013, supposedly taking all sorts of pictures. Nobody's seeing them. Or the Japan sent HD cameras supposedly around the moon, like 5-6 years ago through the JAXA program. No, those pictures, you see American media covering that? Nope. I mean, they're all in on it. It is the greatest con of all time, the greatest trick of all time. And again, it's the one that everybody fell for, including, it doesn't matter how rich or powerful you are. Most of the, I'm sure there was some people at the high levels that knew, but most people, they fell for it. Why wouldn't they? We were indoctrinated since children.
Yeah. Hook, line, and sinker. So, I mean, I've been buying it for the longest time, and part of that was for me was all the science fiction and Star Trek and Star Wars and 2001: A Space Odyssey. I mean, I'm on hook, line, and sinker. I think this is the coolest thing. And one of the things though, as I have grown more spiritual and gotten closer to God, and what I know is going on in the world by this authority that is guarding Antarctica, as I have realized what these people are doing, which is try to separate everybody from God. I'm just going to be flat out here. What do you think they found? Do you think they found the edge?
I think they found the edge, because whatever it was so big, physically large, that they couldn't come up with a cover story for it. That was the big thing. Because, for example, Area 51, you can hide Area 51. Just put up a whole bunch of fences with scary signs and guys driving around in black trucks. You can hide a small chunk of Nevada. But this thing was so big, they had to hide the entire continent. They had to keep everybody out entirely. So, yeah, I think, again, depending on which way you want to look at it, I think the edge or the barrier or the firmament. Now, whether it's permeable, whether you can pass through it, whether it's made out of energy or a heavy element or a heavy water, we don't know. But what I think is they found it was so big that that they figured out the corporations, they couldn't allow the corporations in there because eventually you wouldn't, if somebody made a mistake, like say you had a helicopter that went off course, well, if that helicopter got anywhere close to this thing, you'd have to take care of those guys. So they said, you know what, we're not even going to deal with it. This is not worth the money that the corporations could make. Therefore, that's why they sealed it off. So yeah, I think they were looking for the edge for 30 years, and Admiral Byrd, I believe, found it and then shared it with the Russians, or the Russians could have been in on it because here's the big kicker. Right after that happened, right after Operation Deep Freeze happened, the Russians and the Americans were hell-bent on getting their rocket program up and running. Because remember, the space program didn't even exist. I mean the rocket program. They built rockets like their lives depended on it, and then within a year after the rocket program was up and running, that's when they put nuclear weapons on the top of them and started firing them straight up, both the Russians and the Americans, because they were the only two groups that could do it, and they did tests pretty much straight up for 4 years. And you got to wonder why. And, if you look at the shots, and it's public information, you can look them up, part of Operation Fishbowl and Operation Hardtack, and then the Russian equivalents, they were mapping out the sky. There was no doubt in my mind. They tried to break through it in 1958 with some heavy megaton shots. And then after that, they just, it was low kiloton or high kiloton shots from that point forward, and they were just trying to map out the sky to figure out exactly the shape of this thing. So, yeah, the Russians and the Americans, they've been buddies the entire time.
Yeah, that's my speculation, too. They Operation High Jump, so they may have found a wall, because some people will say, well, why don't we fall off the edge? Well, apparently from what Admiral Byrd said, is there's a wall of ice that they kept running into, a huge wall of ice.
Yeah, the Antarctica is the most unique continent of any of the continents that we have. Most people, again, don't understand that the water does not fall off the edge. One, because Antarctica slopes up 200 feet, almost straight up, along the entire edge of the continent. That's just the first part of 200 feet. That's if you're trying to get to the beach. And then once you get on top of that thing, then it slopes upwards to 2 miles, pushing 10,000 feet, and then it plateaus off. Most of the continent is at 10,000 feet or higher. And then there are certain mountain ranges here and there, but it is an extremely hostile place where, there's hundreds and hundreds and thousands actually millions of square miles of just ice and snow. Was there a point where they couldn't get past it? Yeah, that's what we're trying to figure out. Is it an ice wall? Yeah, maybe. I'd like to think it would be a little more advanced than an ice wall, but then you never know. It stopped them dead in their tracks. I have no doubt.
It certainly sounds like a fence, and then you have Operation High Jump, which sounds kind of funny. They're trying to get over something, and then you have Operation Fishbowl, and they're going, all right, we can't get out of it this way, so we're gonna launch some high altitude nuclear testing into the fishbowl. The fact that it's called fishbowl truly raised some questions for me as well.
Oh yeah, that's the best name they could come up with. Yeah.
And that just blows me away. So that's Byrd. That's people need to know about this whole Antarctica Treaty and the fact that we've never circumnavigated the globe. Nobody's done it.
Yep.
North to south, 360 around. Nobody's ever done it. So when we come back from the break, I want to talk a little bit about the azimuth equidistant map and how it associates with the UN and the USGS, and we're going to give a little bit of history about that. And then later on in the show, we're going to talk about the models and how this actually works. And I've actually got some questions for you. There's things I can't rectify yet, but I'm working on it. And I tell you, I'm definitely a globe skeptic at this point. So if you would like to call into the show and talk to Mark, ask him any questions. I know this is a hot topic. This is a taboo topic. Please do call in. We're going to open the phone lines up probably 20 till 8 or so, and so feel free to call in 347-324-3704. 347-324-3704, and we will be back here very shortly with Mark Sargent.
Nobody has a monopoly on what is a very hard problem, but I don't have much patience for anyone who denies that this challenge is real. We don't have time for a meeting of the Flat Earth Society. Sticking your head in the sand might make you feel safer, but it's not going to protect you from the coming storm. And ultimately, we will be judged as a people and as a society and as a country on where we go from here. Our founders believed that those of us in positions of power are elected not just to serve as custodians of the present, but as caretakers of the future. And they charged us to make decisions with an eye on a longer horizon than the arc of our own political careers. That's what the American people expect.
Welcome back to the Awakening Liberty Show. You know, I came across that clip, and in much of my research in the truth movement, it seems to me that there is more truth the more resistance there is. So, you know, the fact that he is mentioning Flat Earth Society at such a high level tells me that they're concerned that people are starting to figure something out. And I also noticed, and I don't know if you noticed this or not, because I know you've heard this clip, Mark.
Yeah.
If you notice there towards the end, he was talking about a custodian of the present and but caretakers of the future, which is not what the Founding Fathers intended. They were supposed to serve in a very short period of time and take care of business the way it was supposed to be taken care of. He said 3 words in the following sentences, which was I, horizon, and arc, which I found very, very telling. And maybe it's just a coincidence, but I've seen this in other speeches where they say things almost hidden in plain sight. The eye obviously being the eye of Horus or the all-seeing eye. He's talking about horizon. He's talking about an arc. You know, why was it written that way? Do you see that? I mean, this is what I caught.
Well, no, you're good, because I didn't catch that, and I've watched that clip probably 100 times. I didn't. You're right. It's a good point. But more to your opening statement on that. People don't understand. It's like, look, that wasn't an off-the-cuff remark. Nothing that he says is off the cuff. That was written into the speech, and it was spooky for me because I didn't see that clip until after I made the clues, and then I realized he had made them 6 months before I had even made the clues. So it's like they were anticipating this thing coming down the road, which was eerie to me. So yeah, fascinating stuff. Yeah, and they are concerned, no question. If anyone has any doubt, look at the NASA picture that was released on this last Monday. You know, the first one, and they were so blatant about it, where they said, "Look, this is the first first full picture of the Earth we've released in 45 years or 43 years," and you know, the first one was in 1972, and this was something that the Flat Earth movement had been harping on for months, and that is, look, you want to prove to me it's a globe. There's only one picture of the Earth from space. Why? And then all of a sudden, NASA comes out, and it's like, okay, now we have 2 pictures of the Earth from space. And the timing of it was really spooky because, you know, it was too perfect, is what I'm getting at. So.
Yeah, Mark, I have to tell you, again, we're talking about what I think is the truth, and it seems to me that we were on target. While you were speaking, I could actually hear you. My wife's got the laptop in the other room, but my phone completely went dead.
I didn't even know. Blog Talk Radio completely cut me off, although my phone was still connected. Again, these strange things, these little electronic signatures that the authority is throwing in on us. So I didn't hear everything you said, but I'm sure everything was awesome and made complete sense. It was great.
Well, I'm going to hear it in the archives, so that's going to be awesome. So let's talk a little bit about. This never ceases to amaze me. Every time I get on target, it seems like they're always after us.
That's okay. I didn't skip a beat. Go ahead.
The UN, okay, and the USGS. Now, there's several maps that we have all been exposed to. We've been exposed to the globe model. We've been exposed to the planet model where everything is widened out. There's the Gall-Peters map, I believe. And there's the is called, what is it, the azimuthal or the equidistant?
It's either the azimuthal or azimuthal, depending on how you want to pronounce it. I just call it the AE map at this point. You know, it's the AE projection, which is part of the USGS, which is the United States Geological Survey. Basically the map makers of the world, and it's part of their catalog. And what it is a top-down view of the world, as if you squish the globe into the floor and you made the North Pole the center of the map, a center of a circular map, and then all the continents were kind of spread on the outside. And then Antarctica, because Antarctica, you know, is literally the bottom of a globe, has to be stretched out around the entire edge of the map, coincidentally like a giant wall of ice. And that map was really, really interesting when I was looking at it. I honestly, when I was looking at it, I was going, yeah, it's kind of cool. What was interesting, though, was two things. One was that it was identical to the Flat Earth map. So the Flat Earth map uses the same AE map, only the Flat Earth map is considered crazy because the Flat Earth map is supposed to be literal, where the AE map is more just a projection. They say, well, it's still a globe, but if you made it flat, here's what it would look like. The other thing that was interesting about it was who created the design of it, because I thought it was a typo. The creator of it, in the short version of his name, because he's Persian, he was Persian, it's now Iran, which was a guy named Al-Biruni, Biruni. And he was a Persian scientist that lived about 1,000 years ago when the Earth was flat. I mean, most people, keep forgetting that up until 500 years ago, all the cultures of the world, all the governments, all the religions, all believed that the Earth was flat. And the religions still stuck to it because, religions don't necessarily change. But they had to adopt the globe because, there was too much pressure coming from science and governments. So Al-Biruni supposedly helped make this map. I was going, that's kind of strange. I go, maybe it's a typo. And then I look up and I found out that NASA had actually named a moon crater after him, the Al-Biruni crater. I was going, wow, that's another really, really strange thing. And then if you want to throw one more thing to the mix, and this is the big one because we've all seen it, and that is the Flat Earth map and the AE map are exactly identical to the UN flag, which was adopted in 1946 before they found the edge, but during Operation High Jump, which meant that the UN and the secret societies that control it, they already knew in advance. They had the old maps, of course. They knew it, a long, long time ago, but it doesn't do anybody any good if you don't have the technology to exploit it. So if you're the king of France in 1500 and you have a map, like an AE map, and you know it's real, what good is it going to do you? Without metal ships and internal combustion engines, you're not going to be able to do anything. Basically, without airplanes, you're not going to be able to do anything. So the UN flag was adopted in 1946, the final version of it, and it is literally identical to the AE map and the Flat Earth map, with one very obvious omission, which is there is no Antarctica on the UN flag. And I thought that was also really, really odd. Because, and Matt Boylan talked about this in his video, because he picked up on it right away when he saw it. It was like, because where's Antarctica? Antarctica isn't even represented unless you want to count the giant, Roman reefs that,
the reef around it.
Yeah. I mean, but the thing is that, and you have to assume that because the UN doesn't address it. They don't say that Antarctica is the reefs. You just have to pretty much go along with that. But yeah, between the three of them, it's really, really unusual because why would the UN flag use the Flat Earth map? Why would the USGS use the Flat Earth map as part of their catalog? And why is the Flat Earth map, which is identical to these two things, not cross-referenced in any wiki, and it's considered absolutely insane. It's considered absolutely crazy. And I was looking at the same thing, and as I'm staring at more and more of this stuff, and I know anyone that's listening that, look, I absolutely thought this thing was the most insane thing I've ever heard of. It was ridiculous and ludicrous and total insanity. And then, but unfortunately, I could not prove the globe. That's what, I just kept trying to prove it to the point where everything was stacking up on the flat side. And the globe side, which should have 500 years of science and evidence and tens of thousands of pictures and, all sorts of wonderful calculations, it just wasn't holding up to the other side. So that's why I'm flat at this point.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at now, as I'm trying to figure out, how NASA hasn't shown me anything other than it seems like CGI pictures. And as you said, China is supposed to have a lunar rover on the moon right now. Why don't they turn it and point it at the Earth so we can actually see some real pictures?
Better yet, why not drive it to the Sea of Tranquility? Why not land it next to where our stuff is? I mean, talk about your great stuff as far as Chinese superiority. You could drive it right next to the American flag, take a picture next to it, and say, we're the only ones that are here now. No, they're not even, they can't touch it because those vehicles don't exist. All those vehicles, all the moon buggies, the flags, everything out there, they're not there. The moon is not what you think it is.
Yeah, I'm in tendency to agree with you there, and I've had issues. I interviewed Crow 777, and we were talking about the lunar wave, which
Oh yeah.
I'm a video expert. I can't explain that, and the fact that it's been verified by several other people around the world, they've videotaped the same anomaly. Something isn't right with that. And,
yeah, agreed.
Who knows what they're really doing? We're gonna do a little speculating at the end of the show here. You made a great comment. You were talking about the flat Earth model. Up until 400 or 500 years ago, everybody knew the Earth was flat.
Yeah.
And especially in antiquity. And when I go to the antiquity side of this, there are civilizations in our past who built things who were obviously very advanced, technological. They had obviously excellent building skills. They had mathematics. They had all kinds of stuff. And in fact, they built things that we can't build today. We don't even know how they did it. Yet these people all knew that the world was flat. So all of a sudden, 400 or 500 years ago, they decide, well, no, it's not. And I mean, can you give me an idea of what you think, why they would tell us that? What do you think they're trying to pull here?
I think it was partly, I don't think it was just the authority. And by the authority, I'm talking about governments, the super rich, and the royals. You combine those into one group, I call them the authority. But I don't think, I'll give the authority some credit, but I don't give them that much credit. Because 500 years ago, I think it was part of the building process itself. I think that whoever built this place, if you want to call it a giant planetarium crossed with a terrarium crossed with whatever, I think that they were the ones that artificially put that idea into certain scientists' heads and said, let's go with the globe model, because what the globe gives you is so unique. What it does is it gets rid of, remember, if it's flat all the way up until 500 years ago, that means there's an edge. And you give people enough time, they're going to start looking for that edge. So you tell people there's a globe, all of a sudden the edge vanishes. There is no edge. You're on a ball. The fence literally becomes invisible, and logic says, well, you can run around a globe all you want, and you're never ever going to find an edge because it's a sphere. So it buys you time. And really, the most interesting stuff that's happened to our civilization has happened in the last 500 years, and it worked like a charm. But what I think was different here is that I think naturally we were going to find it eventually anyway. Unfortunately, the people that found it were the authority or the government, or who, in this case, the Russians, the Americans, and they had a decision to make, and that was, okay. And this is the question I pose to people out there. I say, look, up until 1957, you could not prove whether it was a globe or not. Let's say in 1957 you found out that it wasn't. Would you tell the public? And they had, their decision. I think they made it fairly quickly, and they said, you know what, it would be too much of a disruption to society. It would change religion. It would change the power structure. It would change a lot of stuff. So they said, you know what, it's only money. Let's see how long we can hold on to this thing. And they held on to it for the better part of 60 years. So there you have it.
Yeah, that's an interesting take on it. I actually take it just a little bit of a step further, because these people who are running the world, as far as I'm concerned, are Luciferian. They're psychopaths. They're wearing the satanic matrix of some sort, and they seem to be serving the satanic matrix. And it wasn't so much that they were concerned about what it would do to people. In fact, I think they've probably known this for a lot longer when we talk about secret societies and them guarding the ancient secrets, that they actually said, all right, wait a minute, we cannot let the people know this. Number one, this is what I'm thinking, is that it would provide evidence of intelligent design, which we're talking about the creators, we're talking about God, we're talking about the Most High God, and that would change everything. They would lose their entire control structure. They would lose everything that they have built in trying to get people to separate themselves from God, disconnect themselves from God, to partake in debauchery, to partake in what we see going on in the entertainment industry, that they can have wars and killings. It seems all satanic to me what they're doing in this, whatever we want to call it, a reality, but it seems to me like that's what they were trying to hide, was evidence of God. Would you agree?
I do agree. And I touched on that in Clue 10, which was literally called Hiding God, which was, from a religious standpoint, it would change us in so many ways right away. I mean, I can't tell you the amount of comments that I've seen people say, well, what would it matter whether it was a sphere, or whether it was round or if it was flat? I said, are you kidding me? I go, you may not care, but the five major religions of the world, Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, and Christianity, that make up about 80% of the population, they would all immediately catalyze into, not necessarily into a universal group, but they would all have the same goal, and that is, let us find proof of the Creator. Let us find proof of the divine. And if that means we have to go out and build a church on the ice so that we can see the handprint of God, they're going to do it. And yeah, you're right. The powers that be, even though I think it would take, I think they could recover after a while. It would probably take 10, 20, 30 years, whatever. They did not want to go down that road. They do not take chances when it comes to something like that. And so they didn't. But yeah, absolutely, it's proof of intelligent design. Some people say, it's the divine. Some people, would say, well, maybe God subcontracted it out to a higher species. Hard to say, but I'm good. It wouldn't really matter because all the churches would immediately think divine. So that's the path you're going to have to go down anyway and deal with. It would be awe-inspiring. It'd be the greatest event in our civilization's history. It'd be unparalleled in scope.
Yeah, because it seems like this whole globe model, this heliocentric universe model that they have all convinced us is real. It seems to me that their goal was to make us this random occurrence in this vast universe, and we're an average people, an average planet, and there's tons and more of them. So it takes the specialness of who we are, and the fact that we're children of God. To me, that's what I was just going, wow, because, if we all of a sudden realize, there is a creator up there is something to this, and we all know it, I think. We all feel it. I know. Yeah. I feel it. Yeah. It seems like that's what they just wanted to do, is disassociate everybody from that.
Agreed. Think of how small science has made us over the last, several hundred years. We're this insignificant ball of rock, that's, been flying through space, could be taken out at any time by gamma waves or ultraviolet radiation or solar flares. Take your meteorites. We're freaking in a shooting gallery, and that we're not even that special. As far as species goes, we're just middle of the road. But this changes that. This means that this particular place was built for us, that it was built, we are the special purpose here, that we are the reason why it was built. And, everyone becomes accountable, everybody becomes unique. It'd be the most fantastic thing ever. The wave of emotion that would come over people from a positive standpoint would be incredible to watch.
Gotcha. Hey, when we come back, we're gonna explore this a little bit deeper. And actually, this is going to be hard to do on radio, but what I want to do is try to get people a visual image of what this flat Earth model looks like. And I've got to go get my dogs because they're going bananas. So we're going to be back here in just a second. We are going to return with Mark Sargent and more of this flat Earth debate right here on the Awakening Liberty Show on freedomizerradio.com. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, the number to call in is 347-324-3704. Again, 347-324-3704. Stay tuned. And that was Jabba, Babylon Decoded, a song that I picked up on here a couple nights ago. The Earth is flat, and he's a flat earther as well. In fact, he's going to be coming up on the show August 8th, which happens to be my birthday, by the way. Jabba will be joining us to talk about his viewpoints, and he's from Switzerland, and I'm really interested in talking to him. We're supposed to hook up next week. I want to know what he knows about CERN and some of the things that's going on in that country as well. We are talking to Mark Sargent about flat Earth, and there's so much stuff to go into here, and what I want to try to do is get an idea, try to get a picture in people's minds. I encourage you, definitely go check out Mark's film. If you're listening in the archive, Flat Earth Clues, it's right there. The link is provided for you, or go to YouTube. And also, what was the name of your website again, Mark?
It is enclosedworld.com.
Gotcha. So enclosedworld.com. Go and look at some of this stuff because, open your minds. You listeners, you guys, you know me, and I know you. For the most part, Go out and make up your own mind. Don't parrot something you've heard like everybody's parroting what NASA has told us, like what your teacher showed us with the globe, what you see on the films and the science fiction. They don't have any proof of this. The pictures we see, I mean, there's one picture of the globe. We have no pictures of a spinning globe. And I'll tell you, that's another big problem, Mark, for me. I have, and I've struggled with this for probably 20 years. I don't understand why you fly from Los Angeles to New York and back to New York to Los Angeles, and you have a little tiny bit of, or maybe an hour, because you're flying into headwind from jet stream.
Yeah, that's the headwinds, though.
So, but not enough to account for the Earth spinning at 1,000 miles an hour and hurtling through space at 66,000 miles an hour. If you're going to take off, I mean, why would anybody fly west? Basically you're going to fly east or you're going to go west because the Earth is spinning east all the time. So if you're going to fly, why wouldn't you go the direction that the Earth is spinning or against it? Obviously, if you're going to fly to Hawaii from Los Angeles, you should be able to take off and be there roughly in a couple hours, wouldn't you?
Yeah. There's some interesting things when it comes to spinning, and I didn't talk about it in the clues, but it is interesting, mostly because there's some math involved and people get lost. But I'll try to do my best here, and that is, look, if the Earth is spinning at 1,000 miles at the equator, and let's say you're flying around the equator, then if you're flying with the spin or against the spin, does gravity hold you down in both directions? Because that's what they're claiming, is happening, that it's locking you down in both directions. Therefore, you're not actually gaining anything over the spin versus flying against it, which is really, really odd. But the better test that I like, that people, I think, that understand a little more clearly is, if you're spinning 1,000 miles at the equator, if like you're spinning a basketball on your finger, at the North Pole or the South Pole, then you're spinning at 0 miles an hour. It's like you're being at the center of a merry-go-round. At the edge of a merry-go-round, you're trying to get flung off, but at the center of the merry-go-round, it's sunny skies. There's nothing happening. You're just turning in a circle. In fact, it's not even a fast circle. It's a slow circle. So the question is, centrifugal force says that it wants to, like a merry-go-round, it wants to throw you off. So why does a 100-pound weight at the North Pole weigh the same at the equator? It's a test that eventually is going to have to be proven one way or the other, but I can already tell you right now it's going to weigh exactly the same. It shouldn't, I'm not saying it's going to weigh 90 pounds at the equator, because, people say, well, gravity is so much stronger than centrifugal force that it's going to, it's going to counteract it. I was going, yeah, but is it going to counteract it completely? Is it going to nullify centrifugal force entirely to where it weighs exactly 100 pounds in both places? You're going to say, well, because gravity is counteracting centrifugal force? No, it's ridiculous. Or I'll throw even one more at you, it's a good one in my opinion. Some people disagree, and that is, on a sphere in space, yes, water, can be spread uniformly around a sphere, like the oceans, right? It's very liquid and it moves very, very easily. But here's the problem. If the ball starts spinning, then centrifugal force starts kicking in again. And you can't tell me that the oceans would not bulge around the equator and get really, really thin up at the North and the South Pole. So, yeah, there's a lot of really interesting questions that we, sometimes ask in grade school and junior high and whatever, that, the science books just smack us down and say, this is the rules, this is what we wrote, you can shut up now. And it's silly. Question? I'll throw one more out at your listeners, and that is because I'm heading them off the pass here, and that is, when I say, tell me how you know the Earth is a globe, some people get angry, but you don't know why you're getting angry. Do you know it's a globe because you know? Because because you saw a globe in your classroom when you were 6 years old, and then that globe stayed with you all the way through high school and college? Or do you know because you saw the picture from 1972 that NASA showed you? Because there was only one picture. So then I follow up and say, okay, how do you know it's a globe without using the word NASA? And that's usually when people get stuck. So again, it's a tough thing to break out of. Look, I mean, I tell people I was physically embarrassed to click on this topic last year when I was looking into it. And that's how I knew how big it was, because there was a visceral response. There's people that are on YouTube right now that make videos and saying flat earthers are idiots. That's their whole rebuttal. is that flat Earth is dumb, but they can't tell you why it's dumb. They just say it's dumb, and that's because of years and years of conditioning. So,
and
anyway,
that's a reason why Obama said what he said was obviously to basically make flat earthers, denigrate them, make it derogatory, make it something that they're not supposed to look at. You heard the crowd, and then followed by the word I, horizon, and arc. They just blew me away. Here's something. I want to put this out there to anybody who's listening live. If you're a pilot, I want you to call in and talk with us about this. I want to debate this. I want an answer to this. A commercial airline pilot, a military pilot, somebody who is used to flying at 40,000, 37,000, 40,000 feet. I want to know, and I have flown an airplane, and just obviously a little Cessna, but when you set your horizon out, your horizon's done, and quite frankly, everything you see out there is flat, and we didn't have to adjust our altitude to maintain our altitude, but if we're on a sphere, so you're flying at 40,000 miles up in the air, or 40,000 feet up in the air, and you're flying on a sphere that is curving. Some people, this is contradictory. It's about 16 feet every 6 miles. It's curving that much, so 16 feet. So if you're flying along in an airplane at 40,000 miles, you've got your altimeter and your artificial horizon is leveled out. You're at 30,000 feet, your cruising altitude. And, wouldn't you have to adjust continually, be dipping your nose down to accommodate for the curvature of the Earth? Otherwise, you just fly right out into space. If there's any pilots out there,
that's
please
a great
call
argument.
in and answer that.
Yeah, that's a great argument, and I'll throw one more wrinkle at it, because sometimes people don't get it. It's like, look, when you're driving a car on the road, if you're on a globe, then the car hugs the curve of the globe. But if you're flying in a plane, the curve doesn't make any difference. The curve technically just drops below you. So like what Sean was saying, as soon as you start flying level, the Earth will start to curve downward away from you. And that's what escape velocity is all about, is leaving the curve of the Earth. And so you would constantly have to adjust your nose ever so slightly down because you would keep gaining altitude. And autopilots would constantly have to do this. You would feel this as well. I mean, if you were flying in a commercial airliner, you would feel this over time. I mean, you'd feel these little dips every so often, or a big dip if they decide to space it out. So it's a great argument.
Yeah, to me, the spinning Earth. The guy that just did the world record jump, he took off in Arizona. And I guess it was about 4 hours to climb to 103,000 feet, I believe is where he got.
128 roughly, yeah.
Right, so it was a 4-hour flight up, and then obviously he came down. Now you would think if the Earth was spinning, now maybe Arizona, I don't know the exact thing, but the equator is spinning at 1,000 miles an hour. Arizona is about halfway in between, so let's say 600 miles an hour.
Yeah.
He's going straight up in the balloon. Now the Earth is spinning. And by the way, obviously the picture, if you haven't seen this, go and look at the picture outside of his capsule. The horizon is completely flat until he gets to the outside shot, which is a GoPro camera, where everything is curved. So anyway, he goes up 4 hours. Now, 4 hours times passing 600 miles an hour, the Earth is spinning to the east. He should have been over the Pacific Ocean. But now he jumps out, which apparently was another 45 minutes down, free fall, in his chute opening. He lands 73 miles to the east. That doesn't make any sense to me.
No, it doesn't, and it begs the question again. NASA, I'd love to. How far up do you have to go? If he was up at 130,000 feet, which is a pretty good clip. That's as high as most spy planes. How far do you have to go before the curvature starts moving away from you? You'd think that it would scale after a certain point of time. That you would get to this point where all of a sudden, then the Earth would just start spinning, but instead of you being locked down. But it's a great argument. I love it.
Yeah, somebody just made a comment in the chat room. It says, Sultran, I can deal with the Earth being flat, but let's allow women to keep their curves, please.
Nice, that's funny. I like that.
Yeah. So let's try and paint a picture here, because one of my big things, when I explored flat Earth 10 years ago, obviously I was still hooked on NASA. I thought this was the coolest thing in the world. So I was struggling with, people can circumnavigate the globe, okay. They're out there sailing around. Tons of people do it. In fact, I have a couple of friends who sailed their schooners around the globe. And so trying to paint a picture here of the flat Earth model and an explanation of that. Now, if you take a CD and you put it on your desk, and you've got the hole in the center. Now, that would be the North Pole in the flat Earth model like we see in the azimuth equidistant map, correct?
Yeah, yep.
Now, if the center is magnetic north, all right,
yep.
You're constantly going to be navigating, obviously, away from magnetic north, so you're actually traveling in a circle, constantly going east or west, whichever way you happen to be going. You're navigating away from north, so technically you're not circumnavigating a globe, you're circling a flat plane.
Yeah. You're just basically you're taking your fork and you're drawing a circle around a dinner plate. That's all you're really doing. You're either taking a really long left-hand turn or a long right-hand turn. But since the distances are so vast, you'd never know. And since the North Pole's in the center of the map, the compass is going to read like you would expect it to. So yeah, it works.
It's going to be reading east or west.
Yeah.
Okay, so if that hopefully that gives people an idea as to what this flat Earth model is. Because I used to throw that argument up all the time. People circumnavigate the globe. It's got to be a globe. But when you start thinking of it flat and you start thinking of the North Pole as being the center, now you are navigating east to west, so it's actually happening. So it's fascinating stuff. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk a little bit about there. Sure. And in fact, I just misplaced my cues here. This happens in radio. So we've talked about the authority. One of the things that blew me away in your video was the long haul clue. So talk to us a little bit about the long haul clue and what that's all about.
The long haul was, and the name was given to me by a British guy. He was sending me flight information when he saw my early clues. But what's funny is the long haul was really the first clue I could have done, because that's what started me on the whole flat Earth thing. And that was, there was a German guy that made a YouTube video, kind of a little musical thing with some text on it. It was all in German, but I kind of got the gist of it, which was that there's something wrong in the southern hemisphere when it comes to plane flights. And he kept saying, he's going, look, the connections are all wrong in the southern hemisphere. The northern hemisphere, everything's fine. Nobody has any problems. But in the southern hemisphere, when you try to fly specifically from anywhere really in South America to anywhere near Australia, the plane flights take these weird connections. Well, first, you can't even find nonstops between some of the major cities. I mean, capital cities, near Australia and South America. But if you can find let me back up. But the connections, so most of them are connections, but they're connecting all over the place. So, for example, you'd go from, say, Buenos Aires to Sydney, Australia, right? And those flights will take the weirdest routes. It should be just a 12-hour shot across the South Pacific Ocean, because you're on a globe, you can take the shortest route, which is, one ocean, one airspace. It'd be a piece of cake, you have to deal with a few things in South America, but it's literally a straight shot across an ocean. And they never take that route. They always go to somewhere like in the Middle East. Or what's weirder is when they'll connect you, like if you're going from Buenos Aires to Sydney, why they will connect you through San Francisco or Los Angeles or Dallas and double the distance that you would normally travel. Why would you spend, so instead of a 12-hour flight, and you guys can look this up anytime you want, these flights will average 20-something hours, 30 hours. I was seeing some that were pushing 50, 51 hours to get from South America to Australia, which is ridiculous. It doesn't take 3 days to get anywhere, but it does in this case, and it didn't make sense. And so I'm looking, and then all of a sudden I start plotting the flights, like the guy from England was telling me, which was, he goes, look at it on a flat map, and all of a sudden the flights straighten out. From Buenos Aires to Sydney, Australia, if you're going through San Francisco, it becomes a straight line. So how did you know how to connect through San Francisco to make it a straight line? The odds of that happening are way out of bounds. And as I was staring at it, I was realizing that, this would be one of the things. It's one of the things you can't hide. If the map is wrong, if it is not a globe, if it is a flat map, then the flights, you can't hide the flights. Yeah, I mean you can mask them the best you can, but on a flat map there are no shortcuts. So you have to try to disguise them. So you make a whole bunch of connections. So 95% of the flights in the southern hemisphere are connections, which should raise, some alarm bells anyway. But the ones that aren't, So people kept saying, and I'll bleed into the other video, which was Clue 9, which was the magic show, because people were sending me stuff and they were saying, well, no, I found a connection, therefore the flat Earth must be wrong. So I started staring at it. I was going, okay, how can there be a nonstop flight in the southern hemisphere? And then I was watching these planes, and then I saw it, and that was the GPS system. And again, you can look it up on planefinder.net or FlightAware or Flight Tracker or whatever you want, because they all use the same system. And by the way, the GPS system is the United States military. It went online in 1995. They turn off
you guys Department of Defense.
Yeah, Department of Defense. They turn off the tracking in the southern hemisphere, to where when you get offshore off of South America or Australia or wherever, as soon as you go across the ocean, maybe 100, 150, 200 miles, you get dropped from the GPS system entirely. Your plane does not exist, and it stays invisible off the system, off the grid, until about an hour before touchdown, where it magically appears, and then it lands and everybody's happy. And the reason why they do that is they don't want to show you the route it actually took. Because they show you the route, it's going to look really screwy, and you're going to start questioning the map. And that was amazing to watch. I just lucked out, watching all these flights in the southern hemisphere disappear. And it's.
So let me get this right. You actually used FlightTracker.com, and you were actually tracking flights. And now it's some distance off of so let's say they're coming out of Sydney, and some distance off of the coast, the GPS completely turned off.
Yeah. The flight it completely drops off. It literally visually drops off the map. And then when you look at the individual plane, the plane, even though it's still flying, says it's going into either approximate mode or estimated mode, which is unheard of, and it stays there. Now, what was interesting, and I didn't necessarily talk about this in the clues, was I said that it's being turned off, but there was a whole bunch of people that came to me and said, you know what? I don't think it's being turned off. I think I don't think there's coverage, which means, and that would make sense, because if you question satellites in a flat map, the GPS system, which of course stands for Global Positioning System, which means there shouldn't be any gaps, would have potentially large gaps in the southern hemisphere. And that's what we seem to be looking at. There is no coverage. Again, pull up planefinder.net. Look in those three oceans, the South Pacific, the South Atlantic, and the Indian Oceans. There's no planes.
But we got planes flying we got planes flying in the northern hemisphere. That flight tracker, I looked at it. We've got planes flying across the ocean, but there are none. I've seen this, folks. Go and look it up yourself. Don't take our word for it. Go do your own research and start to critically think. There's planes flying across in the northern hemisphere, and they're being tracked, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. The northern hemisphere is perfectly fine. Yeah, they're not flying the routes they probably should be, because again, the map's wrong. But in the southern hemisphere, it's completely empty, and it goes against everything that we know. I mean, the whole point of the Global Positioning System is that it has complete global coverage. But they'll be the first ones. There'll be people that have already emailed them, and they say, "Oh yeah, we've got some problems in the southern hemisphere," but they won't say why exactly. They give you the runaround, but you can't tell me. I said this in one of the videos. I said, "Look, you can't tell me that an American system isn't going to track American tourists, because we do a lot of tourism down in South America and Australia. You're telling me we're not going to track American citizens? Yeah, a bunch of crap. Of course we are. We're the American government. We spend money on all sorts of ridiculous stuff. We are absolutely going to track them, but we don't." So
yeah, Mario in the chat room.
Go ahead.
Mario in the chat room made the same observation that I did. We've got a lot of planes that have been disappearing. Obviously, Malaysian Airlines. These are planes that have GPS systems on them. They're planes that have, we can't even find the black boxes or the pingers. And this could possibly be an explanation as to why these planes are disappearing with no trace. I don't know if it's aliens or whatever.
Yeah.
It seems to me. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, the Malaysian flights, no question, were not on the system when they went down. And it was kind of funny that they brought it up. I think there was a mistake made there, which was, there were questions that came up about the GPS system, but nobody really latched on to it. Had I gotten these clues out earlier, before the Malaysian thing sort of happened, I think they would have paid more attention to it, because it would have been more fresh in people's heads. But yeah, there's no question. You can't lose a frickin' flagship plane. It's 2015. You don't lose a 777 in the middle of it. It wasn't even that far. It wasn't in the middle of nowhere. It was just in the Indian Ocean. Planes don't get lost like that, but they do now. Again, you want to watch lost planes, just go on Plane Finder. They get lost every hour.
Yeah, planes hit buildings and you can't see them anymore. So I don't know. We're being lied. Yep. We're being lied to about everything, folks, and it's time to start waking up to what's happening. You know, they trick us with the Federal Reserve. It is nothing federal. It's no more federal than Federal Express. They trick us with 9/11, which, in my opinion, was a theatrical Hollywood production, and they fooled everybody. Obviously, there's no planes that found at the towers. There's no plane found in Shanksville. There's no plane at the Pentagon. They lying to us about everything. The lies are just off the hook. They are outrageous. So you kind of start looking at some of this stuff. Now, let me ask you another question. And again, this goes back to me. It seems like every year, and I've watched this for about 5 years, and I gave up because every year I heard that somebody was going to try to attempt a north to south 360-degree circumnavigation of the globe. Every year, one or two of them pop up, and there's a little sizzle video, and somebody says they're going to try and do it, and every single one of them has been unsuccessful. They never even make the trip. So it's like this little breadcrumb they keep throwing out there. And so nobody's done this, folks. Look it up. Nobody has ever flown over the North Pole or circumnavigated the globe north to south. This is a huge problem for me. Now, secondly, if you're going to leave, let's say, the tip of South America, and you want to fly to South Africa, just like we fly over the North Pole, and we all talk about that, we can sit there and have cocktails and fly over the North Pole. Isn't the shortest distance, obviously, between the southern tip of South America and South Africa to fly right over Antarctica?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And those flights were stopped decades ago. There was you'll have to forgive me because I haven't memorized the name of this one, but there was a flight in the 70s that supposedly crashed into some mountains in Antarctica, and after that they completely banned flights from any commercial flights from really going anywhere near Antarctica. And so, yeah, you're absolutely right. The shortest distance between 2 points on a globe would be to fly over Antarctica, but they don't do them anymore, and they just kind of gloss over it now. You know, you go through a whole bunch of hoops and red tape when you try to dig into this. But yeah, it's again one of those weird things. And honestly, I was surprised they let flights anywhere near that place anyway, even if they skirted the edge, because that would mean it would make more work for the Antarctic Defense Force. Right.
Yeah, and I wonder if any of those flights ever occurred. If those were just, obviously, nobody's on the plane. The plane wasn't even in the air. I find that kind of interesting because obviously it hasn't been done. So I got a lot of questions about that too. It's very, very strange to me. It almost sounds to me like the plane that crashed, it probably hit the side of the snow globe, right?
There you go. Well, yeah. There's always that. Good point.
It's funny. I've been looking. Like I said, my brain has been wrapped around this for 2 months now, and I'm all these thought experiments, and I'm just the gerbils are running around in my head, going nuts. And then I started looking at a snow globe, and I'm going, wow, where did that toy come from? I asked a bunch of questions about it, and like I said, I've got problems with the global spinning Earth. Like spinning, definitely. I've got problems now that I'm trying to figure out and rectify in my head. Things like the Coriolis effect. And let me ask you this, Mark. I mean, one of the things I've been watching in the sky for the last 3 days is I've seen all these models where the sun is basically chasing the moon, and they're in a synchronous orbit. They're right opposite of each other, and that they're actually rotating around us. We're not This isn't heliocentric. We're talking about geocentricity here. So we're not moving. We're on a flat Earth, and they are actually very close to us. They're not 93 million miles away or 240,000 miles away. And they're traveling in this sequential circular orbit. Now, I'm looking up at the sky the last 3 days, and I've got the sun and the moon in the sky at the same time. And actually today was really weird because they were almost at the same altitude. So
there were several people posted videos on that today. Good catch. In fact, it was a half moon, but the sun was opposed to it, and you're looking at it, it's like, why would it be a half moon when they seem to be like right there, right across? Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Right, and actually, what you're saying there really touched me too, because yesterday the half moon looked so fake. I mean, it was a perfect line. There was no blend. There was no nothing. It was just a perfect line. It looked like a pie in the sky had been cut. Was very strange looking to me, and even today was very strange. And that's interesting that other people photograph this today because I kept looking at it with the show, obviously, and I'm going, what in the world? So I started thinking of some other models, whether these things are actually in spirals, if they're on some sort of spiral circular orbit and they're changing their distances or changing their altitudes. Or the other thing that came up to me was, and I got to get an animation program because I want to mess around with this, was the yin-yang. Maybe these things are traveling the yin-yang around us.
The yin-yang symbol is perfect when you lay it on top of a flat Earth map. It is so eerie that the moon travels around one circular path and the sun the other. It's brilliant. How old is that symbol? You wonder what they knew.
I said the same thing to my wife today, and another friend of mine. We were at a barbecue, and I said, "Wonder what these guys knew." I mean, obviously something was going on. So, I got a few more things I want to go to, and I encourage anybody out there, just call in if you got any questions for Mark. I mean, I think he's laid it out here. I have become a skeptic of the global heliocentric model big time at this point, and I'm like you, Mark. I didn't want to look at this, but again, I wouldn't be. I do this because I'm looking for truth. I'm always a student, and I encourage everybody out there to check into this, look into it, and just start asking the questions. I'm going to talk about Jeranism and his laser test that just happened here recently. And I guess there's another one coming up. I'm going to get your feedback on that.
Sure.
Please call in 347-324-3704, 347-324-3704. We are going to open up the phone line, so call in if you have any questions. Please be respectful. We know this is not a taboo, but it's definitely a controversial subject. But please be respectful. If you have questions, please do call in, and we'll get you on the air right away. So stay tuned. And welcome back to the Awakening Liberty Show right here on the FreedomizedRadio.com network. And yeah, that was me busting out a little rap over a funky groove. So I have a lot of fun with doing some of these ads and recording stuff for people. We're talking to Mark Sargent, and we're talking about flat Earth, and we were talking about the debate and why this has gained so much traction. I want to bring up here the curvature of the Earth because there are lots of people now actually trying to justify this and actually measure this curvature that they say we have based on mathematical principles, obviously looking at the sun, trying to figure out where it is, and the Pythagorean theorem. We should be able to, based on the globe, which is roughly 27,000 miles, we should be able to use the Pythagorean theorem to determine how much drop and how much curvature there is. Yeah. And I'm going to point out here real quick before we talk about Jeranism's laser test. Neil deGrasse Tyson has recently been on the Discovery Channel, the History Channel, the Science Channel, the Learning Channel, whatever, and he recently said that the Earth really is quasi-spherical. It's not really a sphere; it's a pear-shaped.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised they even let him say that because all of a sudden that begs the question: wait a minute. Every picture I have seen of the world, the spherical globe, is a sphere. It's a perfect sphere. I mean. Does that make any sense to you?
No, down to the pixel. It's a sphere. Yeah, it's a perfect sphere. Yeah, that quote is going to haunt Neil deGrasse Tyson till his dying day because when he did that little, I think it was a college lecture tour, and he said that it's an oblate spheroid and that it's more pear-shaped, that it's heavier in the bottom than it is in the top. And it's like, okay, then why was the only photo that we ever saw a perfect sphere? Why is Google Earth an absolute perfect sphere? Why was this photo was just taken 4 days ago? Why is that a perfect sphere? And that's absolutely going to come back to haunt him. Hopefully he and I won't meet because that question will come up eventually.
Yeah, and most definitely. And I guess it's a 24-hour time lapse they show us of the world spinning, but the clouds don't move at all.
The only record that we have of the Earth rotating on its axis is supposedly from the 1990. That's 25 years ago. The Galileo, and that's not even technically a movie. It was supposedly just a bunch of still shots that were stitched together. But Matt Boylan figured it out almost immediately, because he had an artist's eye, and he goes, "Look, here's 24 hours, but the weather isn't changing. The clouds aren't morphing. When does that happen?" And then, of course, when they did a little zoom-in shot where they didn't show any rotation, but then they show some weather morphing. But that's because in 1990 it was way too tough to simulate with the special effects technology that they had at the time. So, and even now, it's almost impossible to do.
And even with the camera, I mean, you're talking about the planet moving at 66,000 miles around the sun. The Galileo mission was traveling some 40,000 miles an hour. And then obviously we're the whole galaxy or the whole solar system is moving in the galaxy at, I can't remember what they say, some,
massive amounts.
103 million miles a second. So there's all this movement, there's all this torque, there's all these, and they've got a camera on the Earth from, and I think Galileo was out some 400,000 miles or something like that.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense to me either. How are they going to get a picture? It actually, that didn't make any sense. Jeranism.
Yeah.
I really encourage people to go check out Jeranism, Jeranism, Jeranism.
Yeah.
Yes. Go on YouTube and look at the Jeranism test, okay? He's actually out there using a laser test. The first one didn't go so well. The second one, they kind of changed it up a little bit. He did a 4-mile stretch across the Monterey Bay, and the cameraman could see the laser on the paper 1 inch above sea level. Now, over 4 miles, that doesn't make any sense. He shouldn't have seen anything below 6 feet. So they did not measure any curvature at all. And I challenge people. Here's what Rob Skiba, you know who Rob Skiba is, right?
I know Rob, yeah.
Okay. Rob is challenging people, and I'm going to put this out there too. Go out and get yourself a 4x8 sheet of plywood and paint 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot, and I'm going to actually do this out in the Black Rock Desert out here. And get yourself a $30, $40 telescope and go out 6 miles, measure it out, make sure your elevations are right, and see if you can actually see any curvature of the Earth. We're starting to see that people are not measuring this curvature. I mean, what do you think of that?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, there's some tests. I just interviewed a guy a couple days ago, Jeffrey Grupp, Grupp, but he just put up a video this morning, which is just amazing. He goes into the refraction, whereas, there's no curvature, and he goes into some great details. It's about an hour-long video, but it's called Flat Earth Volume 1, The Chicago Skyline. Light refraction and the illusion of curvature. And basically what he's showing is he's going, look, there is no curvature. He goes, there is refraction only. And he can prove it. And it's a brilliant, you gotta concentrate, you gotta watch the video and don't skip and go get a sandwich or anything. But it's worth the watch, because by the time you get to the end of it, between that and the Jeranism test and the other people that are doing stuff, no, there does not appear to be any curvature at all anywhere. And it's really great. I hope to do some tests of my own here pretty soon.
We all got to get together and do a round table and bring some of these people to the table that seemingly to me, Mark, I got to throw this out there. It seems to me from what I know about Eric Dubé, what I know about Matt Bowen, these guys are not religious. They don't believe in God. They're kind of New Agers. And my instincts tell me that that's kind of why they're bashing you. It's kind of why they're bashing Rob Skiba. Because he's grounded in Scripture. And in case you don't know this, folks, Scripture talks about a flat Earth. It mentions it as a circle. They give it the word ball. And it talks about the sun and the moon being inside the firmament, water above, water below, and the four corners of the Earth. Well, for a sphere, there's no four corners. Go look this stuff up. And Mark, thank you for being on the show. I'm running out of time here.
Thank you. Oh, no, I know, but thank you very much.
Yeah, we need to do this again. And there's a couple people I want to introduce you to, and get some other. I'd love to get you, Rob Skiba, Jeff Hayes, who wrote Rise of the New World Order, The Calling of Man. I've had Marshall Masters on, who's a Planet Xer. And by the way, if we are not a heliocentric model, this whole Planet X thing's a ruse from the Illuminati, as far as I'm concerned.
I think it's a ruse. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it brings that really into question, and who knows? They may project something in the sky to cause mass panic and then impose martial law, take all of our rights and liberties away, vaccinate everybody so that they can depopulate. I don't know what's really going on, but that's what I'm trying to find out here on this show. I'm investigating. I'm talking to people. Mark, thanks again so much for being on the show. Would you come back?
Oh, I'd be happy to come back. You just let me know.
All right, Mark. I appreciate it. You have a great night. Okay.
All right. You too, Sean.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Folks, I got to wrap it up here. An amazing interview with Mark. I definitely recommend you go and check out Flat Earth Clues on YouTube. Just go watch it and start to critically think. Start to ask your own questions. There are things that I'm having issues with that I can't rectify yet. and there are experiments yet to be done, and there are people all over the globe now going, wait a minute, something is very wrong. And the one question, just start with this one question, why we've never circumnavigated the globe north to south. Something is wrong, okay? Why is there a treaty in place that doesn't allow you and I, the 99%ers, to go down there and see what's there? Why are the governments that are involved all involved in the Illuminati banking families? Why are they doing this? My gut instinct tells me that they found evidence of God or intelligent design. Whether it's God, aliens, whatever. For me, it's God. And we've all got to wake up to the lies that are being told. We are being manipulated. We are being deceived. It's absolutely necessary that we come together as humanity because time's running short. The lies are getting bigger, and they actually know, and I feel in my heart they're getting scared because people are starting to wake up, higher consciousness, God, whatever. He's telling us, look, it's time to wake up, people. Tell your family, tell your friends, and as Mark said in his video, we didn't get to this, the number one thing about Flat Earth is don't talk about Flat Earth. Think about it like Fight Club, okay? Just give them tidbits. Ask them questions like, why are the planes in the southern hemisphere not being tracked on GPS? Why is wealth being hidden in Antarctica? We got somebody that said there's more uranium down there and coal and enough to supply the world for hundreds and hundreds of years. Why are we not down there? Why are the corporations not down there? Why are the governments that are involved down there all in the space program and all trying to fake? Okay, folks, that's the second time when I'm talking about the Illuminati, I'm talking about the truth, and that's the second time my phone dropped off tonight. Just actually stayed connected, but Blog Talk kicked me off the air. So anyway, I got to go. I'm out of time. I'm going to go ahead and play a rebroadcast for you. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and I hope you're listening to the archives. And just check this out. I mean, like I said, I'm not convinced yet, but I have more questions about the theory of a spinning globe hurtling through space than I do about the possibility that the Earth is flat. So go and check it out yourself. It's not just about, like I said, it's about breaking the matrix. It's very, very important that we do this. I want blessings to all, and everybody have a great night. And thanks for tuning in to the Awakening Liberty Show. I will see you next week with a stack of truth that will blow your mind. Thanks again. Bye-bye now.